Good morning, everybody. Another coffee talk with my friend Joshua Roberts. How are you doing this morning, Joshua?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm super excited to have this conversation today.
Awesome, me too. So, today, everyone, our topic is on self talk and what are the stories that we're telling ourselves. Do you want to kind of jump in on this really quick to start off,
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I learned,
Joshua?
yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Okay, great. So one of the most important things I learned was paying attention to how I communicate with myself and how I criticize all the things that I do and changing that perspective, and also how the story that I tell myself is creating the life that I may not want, and how important it has been to change my story and change my life.
Ooh, that's some deep stuff. I think when we think of stories, we think of, things that have happened to us, things that we've been through versus who we really are and the person that we're kind of bringing to the world. I think when we're having this self-talk, a lot of times it's either negative or positive, and I think more than anything, we kind of veer to being a critic in our life. I think that a lot of times the stories that people tell us, we want that symmetry and we want to, kind of be like them in a way. But I think a lot of times that kind of misconstrues our own story because, you know, depending on the depth of trauma, you might relate to a story that maybe even happened to you.
Right,
So, I think it's important for us to kind of sit with ourselves and really think about what we're telling ourselves, be in observation of your own mind per se, so that you can kind of dive into yourself. I think we are too um set in our ways to get to know other people versus knowing ourselves, and the most important person is ourselves.
right,
And what we were talking about before we got on this coffee talk was, these stories that we're kind of coming up with have a lot to do with what's playing out in our energetic field around us. And we really really need to take note as to what that self-talk is really doing to our lives.
right,
And if we're saying too much negative stuff to us, or we've had experiences in our childhood where somebody kind of downsized us, we're still semi repeating those on autopilot because we haven't healed them.
right.
And so that story continues in our head too, and we believe things sometimes that aren't true because of those traumas. And so I think our talk today is really really, like, we really want to pressure everyone to just sit with yourself, like really get to know what your good and bad side of you is, and how your story that you're telling the world is influencing your life. Is that going in a positive way or is that going in a negative way?
Mm,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, I agree. I feel that it's so important to, monitor what it is that we're telling ourselves on a daily basis. There's so much pressure to be a quote unquote perfect person and have this perfect life and do all these things. The world has created this idea of perfection through many, many systems, education, religion, parental, societal pressure. All of these things are putting us in a space of judgment all the time. And I feel that it's so important to really pay attention to that, because we're so hard on ourselves. If we don't look a certain way, we don't act a certain way, we don't make a certain amount of money, we don't have a certain amount of things. We're all basing our happiness and our success in life on all of these other people's ideas instead of our own ideas. And therefore we end up in a space of putting ourselves down because we're not achieving this quote unquote perfection, or this idea of perfection, or even this idea of what we think we need to be. And instead, I would encourage everyone to look at the things that you're saying to yourself and start celebrating the wins every day instead of celebrating the losses, because I think it's so important in order to create a better life, you have to start looking at yourself in a positive perspective.
You,
We have goals and we have things that we want to accomplish. And I think that's part of getting to where we want to be. But if we're always focused on the negative, we're just going further and further away from that outcome.
right. And then, that story becomes more permanent in our mind, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
there's really no possibility at that point, once you've, really made that story concrete, that there's ever going to be any change there. You
Right.
know, I think when we get to a place where we're just so stuck on that story, that's when the real
Mm,
change needs to happen.
mm,
Because usually our feeling around that is that we're feeling horrible about ourselves. We're really, really too hyper focused on what other people are thinking about us. And I
right.
think at that point, some of us are hopeless. And, if we've had a bad behavior in the past, that person is, always going to believe that we've had this bad behavior and that we can't change. And so sometimes I think that story gets stuck because we are hopeless in the fact that anyone would think that we would ever change or be better.
Right.
And so I think that's also, part of that story that we tell ourselves. And when we get to that place where we can't change, that's when we really, really need to seek out some help. you
That's
know
right.
we are really, really so stuck on this story, and it might even be a make believe story, parts of it,
Right.
because we are so much in pain, and we are so hyper focused on everybody, their judgments around us. What are they going to think? What are they going to do? How are they going to feel? Like, it really kind of sets us up for failure.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, like you said, on a daily basis, stuff's coming at every angle. This perfect life. It's like, wow. Sometimes I go out into nature and I go, this is perfect life right here. There's nothing, that is imperfect about it.
Right.
But we don't seek that out. We seek out these stories that really keep us in a prison.
Right. Right. And it's
So
interesting. It was like, I like what you said, in nature, in the moment, being completely present, it's perfect,
it is.
and how often is it that, when the future and the past has nothing to do with where we are, when we're so present in the moment, how is it ever not perfect? We're
Right.
perfectly present in the moment, living we're standing, we're breathing, we're loving, we're doing all the things, whatever that is. But in the moment, it's perfect. It's this story from the past. It's these past traumas that we've identified with. It's this language that we've been telling ourselves this whole time that's created all these feelings of unhappiness, unworthiness, self-doubt, and it's taken away our ability to create a perfect life for ourselves. And I don't want to use the word perfect, but create an abundant life for ourselves, abundant in love, abundant in blessings, abundant in joy, abundant in anything that you might want to co-create with the universe. And so it's so, like, I'm going to share just one quick personal story. I identified with my parents getting divorced when I was 9 years old. It was very traumatizing for me. I had to take care of my four brothers and sisters, and I was really angry with my mom for a lot of years. And I
Sure.
didn't understand what it was. I couldn't understand why we couldn't have this clear relationship. And, it was until I was Probably in my mid 30s that I realized that I was holding this grudge against my mom from this trauma and identifying with that story. And that same story is the one that I use to justify all of my poor behaviors, my drug use, addiction, all my mischievous activities, all these bad relationship issues that I had. I blamed all of that on that one story.
Right.
And and then as I sat with a group of healers in a ceremony setting and worked with that story and changed that, I realized that when I look at what my gift was from that experience was that I became, because of that, because of all that pressure, because of all those things that happened, I became the most resourceful, talented, gifted, and serving and loyal individual. I got all of those gifts from that one traumatic story that I carried my whole life. And I
Yeah.
got all of those
Well,
gifts, and I was able to release that, change that story, and look at that whole experience in a space of love and joy versus this is something that's going to mess me up for the rest of my life.
oh, sure. And I'm sure that that story kept you and your mom separate from
It
each other.
did. It did. It really was a huge block in our relationship. Being able to transfer that from a negative into a positive, embracing all of those positives, let go of all that animosity and that little subconscious grudge that I had, even though I didn't know what
Right.
it was released. And then I've been able to have a very clear and loving relationship with my mom ever since. It was a huge transformation.
Well, and I think why it was probably so impactful for you is because who's the very first person that teaches us love?
Right.
It's mother.
Yep.
Our mother is that one. And I think, even when I'm dealing with clients and stuff like that, I say a lot of times our trauma in relationships goes back to our parents and
Yeah.
how we had the relationship with them, because basically they're the ones that teach us love. They're the ones that tell us whether we're a boy or a girl. They're the ones that teach us how to act. They're responsible for all of those things in our childhood. And I think as adults, when we grow up, we hold them responsible.
Yeah.
We completely do. And I think we hold those grudges because I think we're expecting them to be in a perfection kind of way because they're, our parent. But
Mhm.
again, those are the strong relationships that influence that story,
Right.
you know? And I think too, when we watch our parents grow and get out of those traumas, we have the ability to convert the trauma.
Right.
And it seems to be a lot easier when they drop the walls and they drop their traumas and they say, look, I've been wrong. Then we can see that in ourselves and go, wait, I've been wrong too.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And now we can come together because obviously there was something in mom's life that she had to deal with, and she somehow, some way transferred that to you guys. But now she's created this reservoir of love past those behaviors. And
Right.
so, wow, what an inspirational thing, to experience with your own mom, even in that, and to understand, hey, I was the one that was kind of keeping love for mom,
Right.
right? And myself.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, I think that when we get to a place where we start that conversion of healing, that trauma starts to write a different story for us,
Yeah.
and then we start to identify that we are the ones that use that story to block a lot of good things,
Right. Right.
you know.
We're telling ourselves it's not possible because we had this experience. We're telling
Oh,
ourselves that we're
absolutely.
not good enough. We're not capable of love, or we're not capable of this. We're settling for all of these things because we don't deserve this because we had this bad experience. When it's exactly the opposite. And we're
Right.
telling ourselves every day, celebrating the little wins, the little things that we do that are amazing for us, for me, the things that I do for me. I speak for me. I act for me. I'm doing these things. These are great things for me. I love what I'm doing for myself. Sure, I have work to do. There's always work to do. There is no perfection, right? And if I focus on that and how good those things are, and then I look at that trauma and say, gosh, this is holding me back because this is, I'm not able to move into a better relationship. I'm not able to move into a better job. I'm not able to move into a more abundant lifestyle because this trauma is holding me back. Instead of
Right.
saying, what is the gift I learned from this trauma? How can I shift this? How can I rewrite my story so that I'm speaking positively to myself, that I take something positive from this trauma, I take something from this terrible, crazy experience and release it.
Right. And to convert it to love.
Convert it to love. Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens. And it starts with that self-love. It goes from the self-love and then like, wow, I'm able to love people differently now because I'm not filtering my whole experience through this one crazy instance that happened in my life that has written my whole outcome. It was written my whole life. And you changing that, you have a whole new option of endings now. You have a whole new life in front of you because you were able to shift that one experience, grab the positive, and move forward and look at your life in a different perspective.
Well, and I think that's when we get that shift of learning that the traumas are actually lessons. They're not,
Right. No, they
uh,
are.
no, they're not to knock us down. They're not to hurt us badly. Although, like I said, we use those stories in defense of ourselves,
Right.
and we identify with that story so hardcore that
Hmm.
we keep healing from ourselves. you know
Right.
I mean,
That,
it's just those people that you talk to, they're like, I haven't talked to my brother in 20 years.
oh my gosh, it's so
you
sad.
know that kind of stuff where it's like, wow, obviously both of them have contributed to the separation. And we if we look back to the origin, they probably had the same childhood with all the bad stuff, and they're both harboring it, and they can't come together in love because they're both suffering still.
Yeah.
So, that's why I say it's good for us to get into this and kind of pick it apart, really pick it apart and say, hey, if I bring gratitude into my life every single morning and I give myself an offering of growth and love and better self talk, I think that that's where we start to understand that we've been playing into these traumas, like a certain way. And we've been kind of codependent on these traumas as leverage for separation. And we really need to understand that that self talk has been crippling us this whole time,
Hmm.
and that a lot of our traumas sometimes, like I said earlier in the conversation, are make believe because we keep sitting deeper and deeper and deeper in them without peeling them apart and saying, hey, look, I'm hurting.
Yeah.
I That's why I put these little posts out sometimes where it's like, if you need me, I'm here.
Right.
And that's all we need to be doing is saying, okay, I understand your trauma, but let me help you change your self talk. Let
Right.
me help you not become codependent on this pain.
Right.
Let me help you start to write a different story so that your trauma isn't running your life.
Right.
You know, I'm
Right.
It's really so pertinent that we dive into this one because this is what's been keeping us from happiness.
I agree. I agree. How many times let me just speak for myself. How many times have I asked myself, why am I having these relationships that aren't working, or why am I having trouble in my relationships, or why, we talk, there's a lot of talk and a lot of buzz about attraction. Why am I attracting people that are, not the people that I feel like I want to attract? And that's
Well,
because I'm identifying with that trauma and saying and basing my life on that story and saying, hey, this story, this is who I am. So this makes me who I am. I'm not willing to change, release, transform, and move for and learn from this experience. Therefore, I'm going to keep attracting people in the same spot. And so I'm prohibiting myself from having a better quality relationship with myself and a better quality relationship with others because I'm still stuck identifying with this experience and not rewriting that story.
Well, and I think what's important to understand here is that the universe is beautiful in the way that it will keep continuing to bring in that same lesson in different
Right.
experiences.
Exactly.
That's why,
Exactly.
say, why do these relationships keep coming up? Well, universe is so wonderful in that way that it's like, okay, I'm going to bring this to you until you get to learn.
Right.
And you know that's that's where we get to grace ourselves with change.
That's right.
When we realize that part of the story is our own behavior, our own action. The other part of the story is, the monkey mind that's going to tell us all these overthinking thoughts. And
Right.
then the third thing is like, can we overtake those thoughts? Can we overtake those stories and learn to create a beautiful story with
Mm,
those old stories?
absolutely. So it's so amazing. I mean, how beautiful is life when you look in the mirror and say, wow, I am a beautiful, amazing human being. I love myself. I'm grateful, gratitude again, for all of these experiences that have created who I am. Every single trauma, every single experience, hard or positive, has created a beautiful you, whoever you are. And you can look in the mirror with joy and love in your heart and show up in the world in your authenticity because that's okay. You're perfectly perfect the way that you are. There is no perfection that we need to become. It's just get to be you every day. And we have these experiences because they're refining us, they are creating this you. We all
Right.
have challenges. We have those challenges for a reason. We get to look at those challenges with this immense gratitude in our heart and say, what am I learning here? What am I learning here? What is
Right.
the gift? What is the gift? And then what happens now? We have better quality relationships. We meet more powerful and interesting and loving individuals. And we're able to go so deep in our relationships now because we're not identifying with that story anymore. We've rewritten the story. We've embraced the gifts. We've walked with gratitude. We talk to ourselves in a positive way. And now, what do we find? Joy, connection, value. You know, what are we looking for? So many of us are looking for validation, but that validation comes from you.
Right, it does. And that's the most important opinion is yourself.
Right,
Because when you're in those moments where you're alone and you're quiet with yourself, you've got to be able to be comfortable with who you are.
right.
And in order for you to be comfortable with who you are, you've got to research yourself. You've got to
Hmm.
observe your behaviors. You've got to understand, hey, I'm not feeling good. Maybe I should go to the doctor. This hurts. Or, hey, my emotions aren't feeling good. Maybe I should go talk to a friend that's really, really positive. You
Hmm.
know, there's lessons and there is support all around us. It's the story that thinks that there's no support around. And
Right,
so when we change the story, we change the perspective, we change the outlook on life, and our attitude starts to see love. And
right.
that's all it sees. We're not critical of ourselves anymore. We understand that, ooh, that stretch mark right there, ooh, that's beautiful because that's me,
Right,
you know, instead of looking at it in a derogatory way. We
right,
start to see those imperfections as beauty in ourselves. And that's where the growth is. That's where we learn to be very, very, very comfortable and happy in ourselves because there's no barrier. We get to live our authentic truth in every experience, and that will bring us love in every direction.
I
no matter
agree.
what. But it's really hard for us to get to that place of sovereignty where we say, you know what, I'm imperfectly perfect
Mm,
and I'm completely okay with that. What
absolutely.
the world wants to be okay with me or not, I'm not seeking out their validation because I love with myself
Yep.
and I am in the present moment, and that is perfection.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
So, you know, this talk has really inspired me to dive in my own life and understand what story I'm telling myself as well. I think that when we get to a place where we can drop the walls, we can become vulnerable with other people, we can allow others to help us change that story, then, this kind of goes like a ripple effect to everyone around us.
Yes.
And, you know, what better service to humanity than working on yourself and upping your game, leveling yourself up to the point where when you wake up, you got that gratitude. All interactions, no matter if they're negative or positive, are always met with a positive attitude about other people and about ourselves.
Right.
And that's where this real connection can take place.
Yep. I agree. I
So
agree. So in conclusion, both of us would encourage you to look, take an inventory, pay attention to how you speak to yourself. Number one, what are you telling yourself every day? Are you building a more beautiful life or are you tearing yourself down? And two, what story are you identifying with? Where can you embrace something that has been hard for you and find the gift in that moment and in that experience, some positive that it has created in you, and rewrite that story? Instead of something that's hurting you, it's something that's healed you, that's created a more beautiful you. And three, change that story and change that story every day. Find those positives, convert those traumas, heal and move on. Find yourself in better quality relationships with a better quality of life and doing better things in the world to support yourself and your family.
you couldn't have said it any better. Well, thanks you guys for tuning in with me and Joshua today. And we hope that we have inspired you to really, really sit with some of these topics that we talked about today. And I hope that, if you are in a place where you need support, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Joshua via Facebook Messenger, and we will be here to support you through those stories and help you to change those and make your life a lot more, well, blissful and
Mm,
feel like you're really sitting in grace. So,
absolutely.
thanks again for tuning in with us. And next week, we will be jumping into some more hard topics, but we hope that there are parts of you that you recognize that need loving and that you bring love to yourself in that way.
Mm,
Alrighty, you guys,
absolutely. Thank
have
you
a
so much.
you're welcome. Have a wonderful Thursday, and we hope to see you on the flip side of self-discovery and happiness in your life. All
Mm.
right, you guys, take care and we'll talk soon.
See you later. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Namaste.